Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve. Today we are diving into an amalgamation of a few of my favorite things. We've got traveling, live theater, Ray Fisher, and Muhammad Ali. I recently went on a quick trip to Los Angeles to see the opening preview night of the Debbie Allen directed production of Fetch Clay, Make Man, starring Ray Fisher, friend of the channel. We're going to talk about the premise of the play and the general logistics of things like the stage design. Then we're going to talk a bit about the cast and characters. After that, we'll get into some of the deeper commentary of the story, and then some final thoughts and tidbits to wrap things up. The premise of the play reads as follows. In the days leading up to one of Muhammad Ali, formerly Cassius Clay, most anticipated fights, the heavyweight boxing champion forms an unlikely friendship with the controversial Hollywood star Stepin Fetchit, born Lincoln Perry. With a rhythmic script by award-winning performer and playwright Will Power and direction by Emmy Award winner Debbie Allen, Fetch Clay, Make Man explores the improbable bond that forms between two drastically different and influential cultural icons. One, a vibrant and audacious youth, the other, a resentful and almost forgotten relic. Together, as they fight to form their public personas and shape their legacies amidst the struggle of the civil rights movement of the mid-1960s. This true story is as powerful and poetic as Clay himself, while also humorous and irreverent like Fetchit's signature act. Finding commonality in contradiction, Fetch Clay Make Man examines the true meaning of strength, resilience, and pride. This production is being done at the Kirk Douglas Theater in Los Angeles. One thing I didn't realize is that this theater is really close to the Sony Pictures studio in Los Angeles. Had I known that ahead of time, I might have made it over earlier and tried to do the tourist thing of taking pictures of the sign or of myself standing in front of it. I will link the show's website below so that you can get tickets if you are local or if you have the means to take a quick trip to Los Angeles to see this show. This story takes place earlier in Muhammad Ali's life and professional career. He's a lot younger and more rambunctious than some of the more iconic clips of Ali that happen to be my personal favorites. Basically, anything and everything to do with Ali's opposition to US imperialism is what I admire first and foremost about him. The stage has a pretty simple layout, but there are some unexpected effects briefly used, such as images being projected onto certain parts of the back, and in addition to the main stage, the show also uses the lower ground level in front of the stage. My picture of the stage isn't quite wide enough to share this, but there are in fact two boxing rigs set up, one per side, and Ray comes down to interact with those at certain points of the show. My ticket was for the third row center, so it was more or less the perfect spot to sit in. I could see Ray, Ray could see me, and I know that for a fact because he told me. Shifting over to the cast and characters, of course my being there to see Ray Fisher because he's my guy and I want to support him, and I couldn't make it out to see his previous theatrical gig because the money and the timing was not right for me to be able to do a trip to Broadway, and because Ray is playing the late great Muhammad Ali. All of this means that I'm predisposed to enjoy his performance and material. And yes, I really liked seeing Ray's take on this historical figure, but also observing the creative choices he made as an actor to make the part his own. One example of that is the fact that Ray enunciates his words more than the real Muhammad Ali did. To be clear, I do not struggle to understand what Muhammad Ali is saying in old interview clips of his, but it's clear that this approach is not one where Ray is aiming to perfectly mimic Muhammad Ali, but capture the essence of his character and of his identity, personality, spirit, and his values at that particular point in his life and career. The other significant standout performer is Edwin Lee Gibson, who portrays Stepin Fetchit. One of the most noteworthy things he has to do when performing this character is he has to change his voice. Sometimes he really hams it up where he's very much doing the Stepin Fetchit voice in a way that is calculated and purposeful, and at times he goes back to his more natural voice as Lincoln Perry. The way that he changes his voice and even has one ebbing and flowing into the other while perfectly conveying why exactly he's shifting voices was very well executed. We've also got the supporting cast rounding things out. There is Alexis Floyd playing Sanji, Muhammad Ali's first wife, and she gets to play an arc that is compelling and meaningful. It's empowering, but it's also tragic. Another supporting character in the play is Brother Rashid. He is definitely a foil. I think I can say that. Now, I can empathize to a certain extent with what his perspective is, but ultimately I don't agree with him. Nonetheless, actor Wilkie Ferguson III, he does his job. You need a good foil after all. If everyone is just cheerfully getting along with nothing but harmonious relationships, you don't exactly have a story, now do you? Finally, there is Bruce Nozick, who portrays William Fox, as in Fox Studios, when it was actually its own thing and not another casualty of being acquired by a giant media monopoly that somehow has not been broken up because the FTC is a sham at this point and has been for a hot minute. Anyway, this character, ooh, he made me mad. Don't go running around comparing your experiences as the child of white European immigrants to the experiences of being a black person in America. Don't do it. But no disrespect to Bruce for doing his job. Playing the character, he was serving that old-timey transatlantic vibe that always scratches a nostalgic itch in my brain given how many old movies I watched growing up as a child. But now let's get into the commentary. Would it be a play about Muhammad Ali and Step and Fetch It without a bit of commentary? There were some really interesting ideas presented for the stories and character journey for both of these men. For Muhammad Ali, naturally you're going to come across the things that people are probably familiar with, him having to deal with racism, Islamophobia, and the generally tense relationship of being a public figure who has to deal with the pressures and scrutiny from both the public and the media. However, the show also explores the struggle of Muhammad Ali having to deal with how out of control he feels about his life. You've got a religious group, you've got Step and Fetch It, you've got his first wife. All of these people in different ways seem to be pulling him in their own directions. It doesn't mean that there is not genuine love or affection or admiration from these different parties. It doesn't mean that people have poor intentions, but people can have their own interests and agendas, and they see Ali as a means of furthering those things. And it was an interesting thing to ponder that someone as famous and revered as him could also be struggling with this lack of autonomy to a certain extent. And it also made me ponder how, despite this play being a period piece, we can still see versions of this dynamic in today's space, be it traditional media or the recent online addition to the celebrity machinery. When you're doing well professionally, you're going up, and a lot of people can try to attach their wagon to you. Not like I would know from personal experience, but I can imagine that it would be a lot to deal with and it could feel quite lonely. Interestingly enough, though, I found all of the material for Step and Fetch It to be some of the most interesting to watch and ponder from the entire show. The play does a lot to delve into the complicated legacy of Step and Fetch It. He was the first black actor to get a named credit in a Hollywood movie as an actor, but given the time of him working and making that jump from being a vaudevillian performer to a film star, it's no surprise that the roles which were available for him to play were highly stereotypical. Therefore, we watch as Step and Fetch It has to fight this dynamic of an audience that sees him as perpetuating harmful stereotypes, the industry wanting him to maintain that lazy stereotype of the character he became known for, the fact that he was a trailblazer who made it easier for those that followed him when embarking on their careers in Hollywood, even with this negative stereotypical material he became known for. I appreciate how nuanced the show is in its introspection of Step and Fetch It as an artist, and how the industry is merely a reflection of the larger societal isms running rampant, and there was just a lot to ponder. When I think about the art and fiction I admired when I was younger and brought something positive to my emotional well-being and development during that period of my life, some of those stories, or even some of the artists involved in bringing them to life, maybe they're now known to not be the best people. Maybe not the right messaging was presented in those stories. And given how social media has swung so hard that they're inclined to praise or condemn art in such a way that they're dealing with these enormous absolutes, especially when it comes to older art, I just really appreciated that even though the play was only 2 hours and 15 minutes, there was such a well-rounded examination of the subject matter for Step and Fetch It's story. The first time I ever interviewed Ray Fisher, it was a few years ago. We talked a bit about this play play because he performed in a production of it much earlier on in his career, and that was the lead-in to him eventually getting booked to be Cyborg in Zack Snyder's DC universe. I had some familiarity with the play and Step and Fetch It because I had looked a bit into all of that as part of my preparation to do that very first interview with him. But getting to actually see the show and experience this story of these two men in particular proved to be really meaningful. But I also found myself very grief-stricken watching the downward spiral of the relationship between Muhammad Ali and his first wife, Sanji, the turn that things take. It felt like a tragic loss because you start things off with them being very much in love, and these performers make that very believable. But once this rift forms, there's no stopping it. It's like a crack in the dam where it's only a matter of time before the whole thing will completely break. And I'm no stranger to watching a tragic love story, so looking back on that arc and really taking in the complete journey that we go on with them, I appreciate it so much. And it's not surprising that I would enjoy it, even though I can tend to be a bit snippy if you spring a sad breakup on me, but that's more so how I react when I'm first and foremost expecting to see a romance. With this show, my starting point of expectation was getting to see a story about Muhammad Ali, and I got that. So I didn't feel disappointed by the heartbreak being part of the story. It was very compelling to watch. Now, some final thoughts. I think the show is very well put together and performed. It gives the audience a lot to ponder. I got the sense from hearing people in the audience conversing during intermission and after the show that a lot of them were newly interested in looking up more information about Step and Fetch It in particular because of what they experienced by watching the story in the play. After the show, I ended up recognizing actress Keisha Sharp as one of the people in attendance. I asked her if she was from Lethal Weapon, the television series, and she said that she was. She seemed surprised that that's the project I would recognize her from, but what can I say? I watched that show back in the day before things got very messy with it, and we don't need to get into all of that in this video, but if you were around then and you know, then you know. But yes, Keisha was really nice. I had a chat with her and her husband about a multitude of things. I told them that they needed to watch the new Boots Riley show, I'm a Virgo, because I had already seen my screeners, and the embargo was up at that point, so it was fine for me to start telling strangers to watch it when it would be eventually released on Prime Video, which now that I'm recording this, it's out. Go watch it. The next day I met up with Ray for coffee just to catch up, and it was nice to get to actually have some time to see each other and exchange words. We saw each other briefly at SnyderCon, of course, a couple of months ago, but we didn't have time to get together then, so we made it work this time. And I also told him to watch the new Boots Riley show, I'm a Virgo. Clearly, that story has been weighing on my mind in a good way. I've already reviewed that here on my channel, and I have said that it's my favorite show of the year so far, and it's not even close. I'm really glad I made this trip. Overall, it was definitely worth it. I think my only reservation, if any, going into it was I wasn't familiar with the venue, and I've seen live theater at different venues in the past, and let's just say that not all venues appeal to me in the same way. Like if we're using London as a reference, I really like the Almeida Theater. I prefer a space that's a bit more intimate. If the theater is too big and I'm seated too far away from where the show is happening, I don't know. It's just not the same experience for me. I want to have a closer view of the show and the performers. And the venue for this play, along with me being seated where I was, it felt like a lot of things aligned so as to be just how I like to experience them. To reiterate, if you have the means to go see this production of Fetch Clay, Make Man, I highly recommend doing so. If it performs well, maybe it could expand to Broadway. I'm not really sure, but if it does, it could be more accessible for people who have an easier time going to shows on Broadway than Los Angeles. But I really don't know how those things get decided, so don't quote me on any of that. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and stream Boots Riley's I'm a Virgo out now on Prime Video. See you in the next video. Bye.